like continue the conversation of habits, routines, because it's something that we all do. And, there's a point, when we think about habits, just like to get on this topic, I mean, it's anything that we do where there's regular practice. So we settle in something and then we're having some regular practice. I mean, that's all really a habit is. It's like you take something, do it regularly, practice it regularly, there's a habit. And so probably about 2 years ago, I changed language from good habit and bad habit to healthy habit and unhealthy habit. And the reason being is because, especially nowadays, you can have a habit that's healthy for one person but unhealthy for other person. So for somebody, the gym can be a healthy habit, but we now know that something like the gym can be a healthy habit. You all know that a gym can be an unhealthy habit for people. So you can't just say this is good, this is bad, because for some it may be good, but for some others they may abuse it and it becomes bad. So I love this term of healthy and unhealthy, and I want us to kind of like dive into that. Like, what does it take to have a healthy habit and unhealthy habit, but also why fight for a healthy habit? What are the big issues with unhealthy habits? Because we all have them. And even when I say that, people are like, well, yeah, of course. Of course I have an unhealthy habit. Of course, like maybe I'm on my phone all the time, like whatever it may be, but it doesn't really shake us enough to want to change it. And so I almost want to kind of like dive into that because this is a problem that we are experiencing. I'm experiencing. We all are experiencing. How do we move in the right direction? That's a bigger question. So I have the sheet here, and I thought it'd be cool just for you to read it. And I want you to read it across. So, like, start line one, go across, and just work your way down. Because I just want to, like, bring to light some of the things. And I was even reading this earlier, just remind myself, like, man, this is why I want healthy habits. So, start from the top and then go across, and then we'll go from there.
Healthy habits increase in value over time. Unhealthy habits diminish in value over time. Healthy habits empower you. Unhealthy habit enslave you. Healthy habits create space in your day. Unhealthy habits take up space in your day. Healthy habits make your mind sharp. Unhealthy habits make your mind dull. Healthy habits give you energy. Unhealthy habits drain your energy. Healthy habits are intentional. Unhealthy habits are impulsive. I should probably pause here and just be like, oh, they're all hitting me. They're all hitting me. Are impulsive. Healthy habits are predictable. Unhealthy habits are unpredictable. Healthy habits welcome self-discipline. Unhealthy habits welcome self-indulgence. Healthy habits are sustainable long-term. Unhealthy habits are unsustainable long-term. Healthy habits unlock your potential. Unhealthy habits bury your potential.
Okay. Thoughts?
Smoking. It's just always the thing I think about with this one. And it's probably something I don't talk about enough, but I'm really proud. And I'm really like, just, we don't have to take smoking, but a lot of the things that enslave me, take up space in my day, diminish value, dull my mind, drain my energy, not so impulsive, not so unpredictable, but self-indulgence, unsustainable. Uh, we could have a longer argument about burying my potential, but like, I think there's a lot of really specific things that I knew were bad for me, but did for years and years and years and years, almost in a self-sabotaging way, but like it was also like I kept doing them because it hadn't sabotaged me. But yeah, I think there's been a lot of things in this right column of unhealthy habits that I've kicked. And I've also started the journey of healthy habits. I think what's interesting about healthy habits too is just this this elusive concept of consistency, and giving yourself grace when you miss the days. We talked a little bit about like, the week before, like meditation and stretching, reading. I'm so good for so long and then I'm really bad. And then just getting myself to start again is always a process, which like when you read these attributes or concepts of healthy habits, it's like you probably shouldn't have to argue with yourself about why you should start those up again. You know what I mean?
For sure.
I think the ridiculous one that I love to use too is brushing my teeth twice a day. I know I got white teeth, but my admission to the camera too is I'm not good at brushing my teeth twice a day. We
Yeah.
talked about this, I think, in the
Yep.
first episode, where like, if I'm going to sleep at night, I'm not gonna talk to anybody. I'm gonna brush them again first thing in the morning. What's the big
Yep.
deal? What's the big deal?
Listen, I don't want, in saying these things, I don't even want to make it feel like I've mastered this. This is going to be a challenge for everybody for the rest of our lives because we're constantly getting things put in our face that we should try and do, and not all of them are healthy. And not only that, we as humans like looking for the easy way out. We do. We want what's easy. We want what feels good now. Like, give it to me now. I want to feel good now. I want this now. I want the whatever it is now. And habit building, especially in healthy habit building, it's all delayed gratification. I mean, you might experience it for a degree of like, oh, this is awesome starting it. But as you're building a healthy habit, it's not this immediate satisfaction like, oh, wow. I mean, I love using the gym example because it's one of the most powerful examples when it comes to things that we're constantly experiencing. When you start the gym, you are small. And when you go in the first couple of days, especially the first couple of weeks, you are sore. And you're wondering, why am I doing this? You look at the people next to you, they have weight on there that you want to get to, but you're not even close. Man, I'm only lifting for bench like 225s on the side, but this person's doing 3 plates. How do I get there? Am I just going to get there overnight? No. It's the habit of going in day after day after day, making incremental growth over and over and over and over again to the point you're like, wow, 4 years later, I'm actually here. Now, when you get there, you're not like, man, I remember, but you remind yourself of, wow, this is what happens when you get there. Now, the people who are starting are looking at you and saying, how did you get there? Well, I was where you were as well. So it's a great example because that's what we experience. But think about every single habit. It's the same exact thing. And some habits are harder for you to see the benefit of. And that's why I love looking at any habit I'm building. I need to understand the outcome I want, the long-term benefit, so I can remind myself why I'm doing it in the midst of the struggle or the boredom or whatever it may be.
So many thoughts come into my mind too, and it's so much. There was such a focus too on just like cheat codes, right?
Yeah.
Cheat codes, like, and I think there's something that came into my head as you were talking there too. I think the healthiest my habits ever been with the gym is also being okay with not growing at all for years and years and years and years and years, which I think there's definitely things I could have and should have done differently in the scheme of things. But that to me is my discipline, is just having that as like my bedrock of life, where it's the start of my day every day for the last 12 years. Like that to me in 12 years, what am I talking about? But like that's where I know I've been every day. But I mean, this is something 12 years old, even sooner than that. But the duration and time, and I don't know. I think where I was trying to get to with working out too, it's just changed so much. I think partially because of what I found out it took to get to certain levels. And I was like, I should probably read more books. But it's fascinating, man. And every day I'm just still so humbled by it. It's amazing. Even just like what I've learned in the last 6 months about endurance training. Like I think we talk a little bit about like heart rate training and like, God, if I had this tool in high school when I was chasing around D1 soccer players all over the high school soccer field. Like if somebody had just explained to me aerobic foundation at that point, I'd probably be playing in the MLS. you know? But I think those are the types of things too, like hindsight bias. But
Yeah.
fascinating stuff, man.
It's fun to think about. It's fun to talk about because it's what a lot of people are thinking. And that's why I love mentorship because, people will come to me and ask me about, man, how did you get big or what do you do? And it's so interesting because in my mind, I'm like, I honestly want to tell them it's not what you really think it is. Like there's moments where it feels great, but all of it gets old. So you have to have something bigger that you're chasing than just getting big because it gets old.
You know what I wanted to tell you about too? This is like a concept I developed probably like 6 years ago where like our bodies are actually like a visual representation of the character we've built over the years.
Mm.
Like that was something I thought of as like such a cool concept when you think about it. It's like, and you take like somebody with a six pack, right? Like you and I and really a select few others like actually know the amount of discipline and work that went in to that. And it's not so much like output work, but even just the discipline
Mm.
of not eating those foods, of saying no to going out with your friends to get to that point where you're chiseled.
Mm.
Like that's where like I'm fascinated by physiques, and then you bring in the whole. We'll stay away from the cheat codes because I think that it's something that just makes, and it's not just in fitness or physiques. It's every aspect of life
Yeah.
these days. It's like, what's the pill I can take?
Yeah.
But it really is something I take a lot of pride and joy in is when I think about what we did to look good is also why we excel in the business world.
Mm.
It's character,
Mm.
and it was built. So use that when you mentor the kid, because
Yeah.
like, I actually don't give as much. I think I don't get like excited when somebody comes up, and I genuinely am like, oh, you don't know what you're getting into. It's been a rough journey, like
Yeah.
in an interesting way too. And even someone like you, like, how many times did you feel awful in your pursuit of trying to look great?
Mm.
Like the meal, the behavior, the vacation, like you tend to lose a lot of utility in very basic aspects of life on that journey. We should do another podcast on it. Sorry, you're gonna get me going.
No, it's real, and I'm a fan of the day to day, and that's something that's developed in me over time, and I think that's why I love habit building. I love the day to day of habit building, not even as much as the outcome. I love what it feels like in the day to day. And that sounds psycho, to be honest, because habit building can be very mundane and boring, but something about that gets me excited. I know the outcome that's coming, but in the day to day and building that, there's something that's happening in every single person when they do that.
Yeah.
And I want people to experience that. Just my goodness, you doing this day after day, you're building something in you that is so powerful.
Yeah.
Because some habits take a long time for it to come to fruition. But if you can imagine building a discipline for 20 years, that's why I love saying, send your habits to college. Send them to college. Have a 13-year-old habit, because my goodness, if you can imagine what that's going to do in your life, it's going to be crazy. So I want you to get this concept with all the things. There's certain things that you have habits and healthy habits that are strong. It's like, okay, when you start thinking about the other things you want to incorporate in your life, it's the same thing. How do I start to incorporate these healthy habits? Now, the reason why I don't give anyone grace with habit building, because we all have habits. Every person on the planet has habits. People just have more unhealthy habits. And so when it comes to habit building, I can just tell people, let's just talk about your phone. I mean, like, God honest truth. Like, let's say when someone first gets their iPhone, they're trying to figure it out. Give them about a year, man, they don't even have to look at it. They know exactly where everything's at. That's a habit.
Yeah.
They got skilled at navigating their phone. He ever like looks at your phone when the screen is off and you see the marks? It's like that's the habit. All the moving. And, I mean, I think about this stuff all the time. Like, yeah, I try to reverse, like, okay, how do I help someone build a habit based upon how they have built a habit on their phone? Because if I can help them do that, then I can help them see, like, okay, you see this over here? You know how you've built this habit on your phone? Like, we need to position this so it's so easy for you to do. It's like clockwork to do.
We talked about this a little bit. I didn't, and not in this context, but like I used to be a BlackBerry guy, and like making that switch from a BlackBerry to touchscreen, I delayed it as long as I could. Now I can easily not look at my phone at all and type an email.
It's a habit.
Built over time.
Built over time. So I love this concept because we can do this with anything. And so this is why, yeah.
While driving.
Oh, well, I don't condone that. We do not condone texting and driving.
I'm just talking about my capabilities, not my practices.
Exactly. Capabilities. You got so good, you could potentially text and drive,
my better articulated as I can watch the road while writing an email.
while he's in the passenger seat.
While I'm in
So,
the back, but very well said. Sorry, I forgot that point of
but
clarity.
it's just really cool because it gets me excited for people in general because now I'm thinking, oh my goodness, oh, you want to do that? I know it's possible. So now it's like whatever you want to do is possible because all you have to do is come back to the habits that you're building in your life. So you've seen this before, but I really want to kind of dive into this and talk about it for a second because I think it's important of just thinking about the habit building journey because it's a journey and it's a journey that we're all on. And so I want you to kind of walk through this because I'll stop you kind of at each one because I want to like kind of get this picture. But at the beginning of a habit journey, it starts with, oh, you even got a little one. It starts with excitement. So
I mean,
tell me,
he's a little one.
tell me what you think about this picture of excitement. Like, do you typically get excited when you're starting a habit journey? What's it usually like for you?
Yeah, it does. And like it's sad. The one I just thought of too is like when the Calm app tells me my daily streak. I love that stuff, because I think meditation is by far and away the healthy habit that I'm least consistent with that will probably benefit me the most. Irony, right? Gluten, meditation. But I am always excited, and I think it's the journey, right? But you're so early in the journey, you're naive.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's always something that takes. It kind of reminds me too of like when you take a new pre-workout. It's like new workouts, like it's almost like a rejuvenation of your entire day.
Mm.
But yeah, always excited.
You know, something I love this initial kind of picture of excitement. I feel like it dies really, really quickly for people because a couple things, and so I want to like mention those to you. This is a chart I'm not gonna give to you, but we'll get here. But I just want to highlight one specific column in here with habits and routines. Just key things that are really, really important when you're starting a habit. I think people's excitement can last a little bit longer if they have these components with the habit. So first is a motivation. Very, very sucky to start a habit when you don't have any motivation for it. I mean, we probably experienced this with a lot of people. You might have brought someone to the gym in the past and said, let's work out. And they're like, I don't really want to do this. Well, they typically don't last long because they didn't want to do it in the first place. So if there isn't the motivation there, that's not a good way to start. Others are resources. It's terrible to start a habit when you don't have the resources. So for instance, it might be like, I want to start journaling and you don't even have a journal. So what are the chances you're going to start journaling this week if you haven't even bought a journal yet, right? So having the resources is so important. Capacity. 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 This is something you're probably going to experience as you start wanting to add more things and you look at your schedule, you start thinking, when am I going to actually do this? It's not only the capacity in your day, but it's also the capacity in your brain. Like, do I have the mental space to add something new in right now? And that's something to think about. Accountability. Do I have someone who can hold me accountable, even just to talk about it with? Because I see a lot of people start stuff. I'm like, who are you doing it with? And that's a question that always stumps them. Like, I don't really know. I'm like, listen, if you don't have anybody to do it with, to talk to it with, you're going to give up on yourself pretty easily. So have people you can dialogue with it. Get a friend that you can hold that holds you accountable. So people don't have that. And then lastly is a reward. What reward are you getting from doing this? And these are just simple things that can keep the excitement going a lot longer as you're getting started, which a lot of people don't necessarily have these things to start when they're building a habit.
I'm naive to a lot of the blessings I have there, especially the accountability, my brain immediately. And I think that's what's been so powerful and special about being in the relationship that I'm in these days. And I am always embarrassed when I say it, but happy when I realize it. But it's all stuff that you forget about in terms of the power of your significant other. But always my biggest fan with that stuff, when it comes to healthy habits. But it's also like and within like the capacity comment, I do still waste 2 minutes a night brushing my teeth. So there's some capacity there.
You said waste.
I just think there's probably healthier habits I can wiggle in there, and just get to brushing my teeth in the morning. But Yeah, Kay's awesome. She's the only reason I brush my teeth at night.
I love it. And I love the accountability. I love just thinking about those things. It doesn't even have to take a lot of time. Those simple things can allow your excitement to last a lot longer because what kind of hinders our excitement is like, oh, but I got to do this. What about this? It's like we talk ourselves out of things or we get frustrated with things or our energy level goes lower because we're thinking about all the things that we did wrong or we have to do. If you have those things already figured out, my goodness, it can be really exciting to
Yeah.
start a habit. Okay, so the habit journey starts with excitement. I hope everybody, when they build a habit, hope every habit you build, there is some sort of excitement. It always looks different, but there is some sort of excitement. So after the excitement phase is,
Discipline and accountability.
and how do you feel about that?
It is the key to life. It really is, you know, and I do always travel this chart down to the monotony and boredom. And I come right back to that discipline and accountability. And I think bringing into this the concept of rewards too, like I'm a huge proponent. I just mentioned it, but like check mark, you know, like in and of itself, that's a reward for a lot of these in terms of like the short term incentive. Stacking up those checks, that's something that just helps me be more disciplined. It may also have a little bit of an adverse effect when I miss the check and start back to zero.
Mm.
You know, it is one of those things where it's like I'm never keeping track again. And it is just interesting. And even as I kind of broaden my view of the whole card, it's just life, man. It's life. All of these different components together. If you can master these and tame them, you can be a pretty powerful place. Next,
Next.
focused attention. 2 to 3 priorities. 2 to 3 priorities a day. I also come back with the habit building journey too. So it's interesting the activation levels, right? When you're early on in a habit versus now, like when I'll use like journaling, which is relatively new habit, but I've gone through a couple seasons of the boredom, of the excitement, of kind of mixing it up, but it's second nature, and it almost feels like my whole world is off if I don't. You know, like it's almost like a supernatural force. Like you have to go back and journal. It has to happen, or else your day is just incomplete, almost like sleeping. But yeah, focused attention, healthy routine. Habits are better together. Something like that, right?
That works.
Consistency, monotony, and boredom. I'm not passing over consistency, but I wanted to get to boredom. This is the one that I love the most. I think it's like, again, the key to whether you go back to start or transcend. And I don't know if you knew I was going to say this, but the plateau of latent potential. I always come back to it,
Yeah.
right? Like James Clear paints this picture so well, and it comes back to reward, it comes back to motivation, all these different things. But again, and we'll use a different habit, like, you know, when you start running, eventually the running is going to get bored. You're not going to want to do it. What's going to help you get past that boredom and the monotony? Like and you'll have sore days, but again, at the end of the day, like it's not even that you're sore, it's that you just are sick of it.
What helps you get past the boredom since you've been running a lot
Discipline and accountability, and it's also the reward. But I want to talk about this too. Like it's a strength, like it's a skill, right? Like, and I'll use my run Sunday. Like I wanted to stop at 9. I really wanted to stop at 9, and there's just this process of trudging through, and next thing you know, 12, 13, and 14, I'm back to a 10-minute pace. Like I don't know how else to describe it other than just how many times I've been in that state of mind and quit and remembered the feeling. Like it's strictly a result of quitting and remembering the feeling. I think to some extent too, even with like smoking and different vices I've had growing up too that were like very much bad for you. It was always about like, well, I went back to it and then I'll stop for a while, and I'll go back to it, stop for a while. Like the concept of forever is pretty scary.
Mm.
And that's true in a positive sense of doing something forever or stopping something forever.
Mm.
And I think that's really where like you bring this entire card into existence and it takes everything. But yeah, there's
Tell me
something
why,
about
like, what about that for you makes it a little bit more scary to either stop something forever or do something forever?
and let's focus on the doing stuff forever. I think it's just always about like when that day comes where you're gonna miss it, you know? And I think there's some habits that this probably won't make too much sense with, but there's some things that like you have to do every day, you know? And if you don't do it every day, let's take, and maybe this isn't a habit per se, but like being present for your significant other. Like when I have those moments of like not showing up, like it's amazing how that can take my entire world and just make it unhealthy and negative. And like, you know, we kind of had that a couple weeks ago with, you know, my mother, bad day with Kay. It was like everything perfect storm. And there was absolutely correlation between like my attitude and behaviors in both of those situations that just snowballed and spiraled. But on the negative side too, it was always this reluctance to I always felt like I wanted to go back to those unhealthy habits too. I never was really convinced that they were truly unhealthy in the traditional sense. And what got me to a point where I really stopped forever, or at least for one more day, I knew it was better to not.
Mm.
Right? Like focusing on the positives versus not the negatives, right? Like that's always helpful too. I think a lot of times when we quit something, we are just focused on not having the bad versus actually looking at like the positive aspect.
When did the or where did the all or nothing mentality come
Hmm.
from with you?
I have no idea. I've always been extreme. I shouldn't say I've always been extreme, but ever since I've like reflected on it, it's and I'll take a second here and just think about it. But I've always been so extreme, man. Like black and white is an understatement. 0 to 100 is an understatement. It's like really polarized. I'm not good with the in between. And like for context too, so before the first time I decided to be completely sober, I did spend 6 years sober for 6 months, and that was no smoking, no drinking, no drugs, nothing for 6 months. And then I spent the next 6 months smoking, drinking, partying, and then January 1st I would go back. I did that for 6 years,
Mm.
which is like just weird. But also in a weird way, like I was always just trying to prove to myself that I could do it and I had the discipline. I wasn't really focused on the why, but again, like black and white, why not just have fun with your friends every once in a while? Right. But for me, I think it's always about being regimented. I guess part of this too is I don't know if I told this story recently, but I'll tell like a shorter version. But like I have been told I'm an addict and I have addicted personalities. So addicts will justify their bad behaviors with good behaviors. So like when I was a kid, I was into nefarious activities, but I also got straight A's. Like I did stupid things, but I was a great athlete. And I would really work hard to offset some of the bad things that I was doing, even in the way I treated people. Like I was always great to people, but then there were things that I was doing that weren't awesome, right? From a civility perspective or just a society perspective, it was not a good thing that I was doing. But I think my entire life to some extent has always been feeling the bad things and always working really hard to offset them on the good side too. I don't know if I've ever really gotten past that.
Mm.
And so I guess in a weird way, there's some black and some white. I don't know. Does that reside with you? Does it make
Yeah,
sense?
that's really, really helpful. And I think people are going to resonate with that. And I think that's part of people in life is like, okay, how many good things can I do versus bad, and how do I offset it? Where I want you to get to, and this is why I love tracking. Love tracking. So I track my habits, and I can tell you, I looked at before this because I knew we were going to talk about habits and routines, and I knew you're more of an extremist. I have evening routine. I have 4 different routines that I do in my day. Um, evening routine, afternoon routine, early morning routine, and morning routine. So
Okay.
those are my 4 different routines. If you looked at those routines in a given month, sometimes it's like, oh man, I remember my evening routine when I started, I was in the 50s. I didn't give up. I was just like, this is new. I'm not good at it yet. That's fine. It's in the 50s. Now, because I've been doing it a longer time, it's over 80%. My whole thought process is I want to get every routine I have over 80%. I never shoot for 100. Never. I don't want 100% of the time. Like, because I know I'm going to fall short. So I just say, listen, my goal is over 80%. If I can do this 81 out of 100 times, that is great. I know because I've tested it and I've seen it is a consistent habit if I can do it that many times, right? And what that's done is give me freedom. And because I'm telling you, what can happen with habit builders is we can become very, very, very rigid. And I'm not talking about it's nothing wrong with having some like structure in our days. The challenge is when everything outside of those things are ruining our days now. So it could be Kay, it could be somebody else. Someone's like, "Hey, can you come do this?" No, sorry, I can't. I got this. This is my schedule, and this is what I have to do. Sorry, you're gonna have to catch me in this window between 1 and 2 on Fridays, right? That's what happens. We can get more flexible when we give ourselves like this space of, my goal with this habit is not perfection. I'm not doing this habit to be perfect. I'm doing this habit because it's helping me become a better version of myself. And I can become a better version of myself without being perfect in it. That's so much freedom. It is so much freedom. So I look at my habits now, dude. I wish you could have seen me when I was doing my evening routine. I started. It was so bad. I was like, I cannot figure this out. I do not want to do this at all. To now, I just looked at my average over the past couple of years. I'm like, wow, I'm over 80%. I'm like 83% over the course of like 3-year period.
That's awesome.
That's how I see it. I think in months, I think in quarters, I think in years, and that helps me see like, wow, look how you have grown in this versus, wow, you missed a day starting over. It's never a start over. It's just like the course of me building this habit and sending my habits to college. That's my whole mentality is like, I'm just sending my habits to college. That's it.
It's special, man. I think in a way it's exactly what I need to focus on to grow. And the word I use sometimes too is violent.
Mm.
Like an extreme doesn't do it, but violent, like and I think too on the ebbs, right? Like the flows, it's great and I can keep myself going when it's good, but like we talked a little bit today about like when I miss that day, like I will enjoy the next month of not doing it almost in spite of. And I love the idea of just trying to enjoy not doing my habits 15% of the time, right? Like almost, and we'll take a positive view on it, the 85, but it's a really, to me, like that's my path to enlightenment and just giving myself some leniency because it's so extreme. And I mean, we talked about this last week. I was like, and I don't even remember this. I was like, so how do you calculate 80%? Right? Like I was like, how do you calculate 80%? Because like I missed these three for the last like it's a long game we're playing.
Yeah.
But I really like that, man. And I also like that you have 4 different routines because I still keep thinking about like how can I get all this into my morning routine? How can I do all this in my evening routine? Because I do enjoy structure and I do enjoy routines. Um, but yeah, the 85%, I'm so violent. I'm 100 or 0.
Yeah.
And it's actually proven in the data too. Like when you look at Magolify, I either do it all or nothing.
And we'll get there. And also when I tell you about routines, that has taken me time. I did not start with 4 routines. Like I've been habit building for a long time. And so I just added an evening routine a couple years ago, and that has been a journey in itself. So I just want to let you know that this isn't like this, all right, load up, which I know that is all or nothing. I'm going to really push and challenge you to like take a step and not take a leap.
It's really funny to reflect on the full circle. So when pivot for the camera here, but like when you did the 100-day habit building, and so me and a bunch of others signed up for it, and I had 8 habits. I had 8 habits we are gonna work on for 100 days, and Ike's like, just choose one habit. We're gonna just focus on one habit, and I kept all 8 in there, and then sure enough, like 2 weeks later, I was like, Ike, can you delete these? Can you delete these habits because I'm going crazy?
Yeah,
But it's full circle. Here we are.
here we are. And it's okay. And this is typically what I see with people. I don't get frustrated because I love the excitement. I think it's really cool when people get excited about habits and building it. So I never want to quench that fire. But I do want people to see realistic. And I think there's something in people's minds that if I do all this right now, then I'm going to arrive somewhere. I'm like, that doesn't happen with habit building. It just, I know it kind of sucks because we love a completion date, and I've just learned to appreciate that when I'm building habits, especially ones I know that are long-term habits, there is no completion date.
Yeah.
I'm just going to keep doing this. So I love this idea of college because, yeah, after I go to college, I'm going to get my master's in my habits. But so far, I don't have any habits I've sent to college. So when I send them to college, then I'll get my master's, then I'll get my doctorate, and then I'm going to be a teacher, right? Like I'm going to build my habits long term, and that mentality is helpful because I see how my habits are helping me become a better version of myself. My habits are helping me become the man I want to be. And so that's where I want you to see with your habits. It's got to go beyond just the goal. It's got to be more in who you want to be. Otherwise, it's going to be harder to sustain it for 10, 20, 30 years.
I love it, man. Love it.
Okay, finish the route. So you stopped on boredom and monotony.
Vision and clarity.
What do you feel about that?
It's interesting to read it on the habit card, you know, but I think, and similar to what you just said, right? I mean, it ties directly into who you're becoming.
Yeah.
Creative work. It's another one. I don't know what that's doing on here. Right before excitement, but I think it's about the iterations, right? And just the constant reviewing and thinking through, is this working? Is it something that aligns to who I want to be? And if not, you know, if it does, if it can be better, then make it better. If it doesn't, then maybe replace it with something that's more healthy.
You know, it's interesting. I feel like we know how to do this to some degree. Like, what happens when we get bored on our phones? We find another app to download. We find another page to look at. TV, if you are tired of watching something on Netflix, you find another show, you go to another streaming service. We are used to the change. It just comes when we are in a habit that we're trying to build to help us. We feel like we're stuck in the habit exactly the way it is. I'm like, you can change this around. You can make this so much more fun for yourself. But for some reason, when it comes to healthy stuff for us, we like trap ourselves into this is how we're doing it. We got to do it this way. And we don't iterate and make it better for us.
I'm immediately thinking about meditation, right? Like I've used the same app the same way ever since I was made aware of meditation. And I have not really gone outside of that initial framework. And I am not good at it. I don't enjoy it. It's not something that excites me. I think boredom's an understatement, you know, but I think that's something where like seeing the word creative on the habit card, there's probably a lot of research and other types of meditation that I should be at least thinking about and trying to find if there's something better for me. But I didn't really think about it. But until you talked about downloading another app, my brain was immediately like, yeah, forget Calm. Maybe
It's
try
like
Headspace.
you can do another app. You can use yoga as an opportunity for meditate. There's so many different options of things that you probably like to do that you
Yeah,
can just incorporate with it. So it's a fun. That's when I say creative work. It's just this opportunity to
that's cool.
try something different.
I love that.
Okay.
I've looked at this habit card and I referenced it 3 episodes ago, and I have never appreciated the creative work aspect on that card. It's just one of those things too. You pay attention, you read things over and over again, but you still miss it sometimes.
Mhm. As you, as someone who likes to innovate, I think you can have a lot of fun with that. That's made it really, really, really fun for me. As like change it up.
Yeah.
You know, it makes life more fun.
I'm thinking about it for stretching too. I think that's like, you know, pliability is so intense and then the other things are so easy. It's like, is there a flow? Like, is there some yin yoga that I can start looking at? Because I do like the surrender class. Like I
Mhm.
like some of those things. It's just taking the time to not be so fixated on that round hole,
Sure.
you know?
Okay, so we're going to be wrapping up pretty soon, but a couple more things I want to really dive into habit building. I'm going to go to the board and talk about a couple things.
Awesome.
Okay, so I want to talk a little bit more about just a picture of habit building and the thing that people struggle with the most, and just kind of like give an example just so you can kind of see a little bit more of it. So you think about hero over habit, like when people say, "Ah, it feels rigid," I'm like, it does at first. Like, I don't know why people wouldn't expect this, but whenever you start building a habit, because it is unnatural, you're building something new into your life that doesn't exist. So when you start building a habit, it's going to feel unnatural and it's going to be a little bit more rigid. And you're going to feel just this pull of trying to get it going. And I always tell people that is fine. That's okay. That's a part of habit building. Whenever you're building a new habit, it's going to feel a little rigid because it's not a part of your routine. You already have things that you're doing. But the idea is that you want to make sure whenever you're building a habit that you get more specific. So with people, sometimes they're like, I want to read. I'm like, that's not specific enough because you need to set your mind on something you're specifically doing so you know how you're going to accomplish it. And so adding something like 10 pages in there makes it really finite to say, this is something that I can build because not everybody has the same mentality when it comes to reading or even just a competency when it comes to reading. So someone saying 10 pages, they're like, whoa, that's too much. I need to read a page. Someone saying 10 pages, that's nothing. Well, I need to read a chapter. So people can get themselves in trouble because the same thing we're talking about activation energy. If you just put reading, the activation energy is so hard for them because they're like, I don't read. So now when they get to the point, they're like, I'm not going to do it. So you have to make it so tangible for you that whatever habit you're building, it's got to feel like I can do this right now. The activation energy is super low. So that's why I put something like 10 pages if you're starting, because you're like, I wasn't a reader when I started reading. I remember growing up, my sister was always a reader. I was never a reader. I was never a reader. So when I started reading, I just start really, really low. And now I've increased it way more because I've been reading a lot. So this is how it starts. It's like, make sure you're specific what you want to do. Make sure, as we talked about in the previous episode about activation energy, that the energy to start it is very, very simple and easy for you to do. And so that's a habit. It's going to feel rigid at first because it's new, but that's how it starts. So any thoughts around just this picture right here?
I love it, and I will be open and honest about thinking about the negative, but also like it because if I don't know how many pages I'm reading, then I would probably be able to lie to myself that I didn't read and not feel too bad about it. Versus like I'm on 20, I expect to be by 30. And this is where like I get a little bit too ridiculous too because I'm like 2 books a month, which is a book every 2 weeks. So then if I have a big book versus a little book or a book that's 400 pages versus a book that's 100 pages. Now I'm selecting my books based on how my, do you know, and you know how I
Yeah.
am, but I think that's very realistic, tangible. And just real quick for the camera, will you please tell everybody how many books you read last quarter?
Last quarter, 15, I think it was.
15 books. It's a ridiculous amount of books for someone that's not a reader.
But it's not when you're doing something like this. I mean, you're reading 10 and 20 pages every day, you're going to crush books.
And that's it, right? And it's 30 pages for you, if I'm not mistaken. Every day leads to 15 books in 3 months. Like that's the stuff I hear and I'm reading, right? Like it's really powerful. And to be able to get through 15 books, you see how much we bring these things up in conversations here, there. That's powerful, man. And again, to know that you weren't a reader before and this is where you're at, you're building that skill, you're putting it to good use, and here we are. But it starts with, again,
100%.
that SMART goal.
Yep. And that's why I love this picture. Sometimes we go, I love habit building because goal setting can be daunting and we will get to goal setting. But sometimes I love just start building specific habits because it takes some pressure off of me of let me just start reading. And I'll even hit my reading goal every day, but I hit it enough to finish multiple books. And so that's you got to understand the win. What's the win? And I'm trying to make sure your mind is getting away from the achievement aspect. We talked about it before. It's like the constant battle just to achieve. Like, I want you to achieve, but I want you to focus more on just what you're building in your life, and you focus more on this, achievement's going to come regardless. You read something, you do something like this, 10, 20 pages a day, the achievement will come. But all you have to do is focusing on something that's low activation energy to really start building a specific habit. And so this is going to come in handy a lot. And so that's why I want to really harp on it. I mean, you already have things like this going in your life, but as you start adding new, it's going to change the dynamic a little bit more.
Yeah, and just furthering the thought process from earlier, I don't enjoy the art of reading right now because my goal is too high. Like, so even if it's 20 pages a night, which is kind of where it started, that turned into a book every 2 weeks. It's too much pressure. And then it's a task and it's something I have to finish. I'm spending an hour plus reading, which we know my days, right? Like, that's probably too much time to spend reading books. But this gets me back to like, what's that number? The realistic number that I can enjoy it as a task in my day, as opposed to something I'm having to do and to hit certain metrics and goals. It's not enjoyable.
You know what happened to me? I started reading a page a day. From a page a day, you start getting better at it, and then you're like, this is like a minute. So let me read more. And then you just increase it over time. There's no rush. Start with whatever feels really low. I can do a page a day, but I'll tell you what, when I was doing a page a day, it felt really good because like, all right, I'm done, move on. But eventually you're like, I want to read more.
Yeah.
So allow yourself to adjust to the habit and start to enjoy it. Don't force enjoyment. Let the enjoyment come as you're building the habit.
It's so funny to think about how many books I read up until joining the Grow or Die Club or like the beginning of this year. And now the expectation that I'm going to finish 24 books by the end of the year. But extreme.
It's okay. I love this aspect of you because it's going to be super helpful in a lot of ways. But when it comes to your growth journey, it can turn into something very toxic.
Yeah.
That's why I don't want you to like anchor on that when it comes to your growth journey. For other things, I think it's going to be huge. Like, you have big vision, and sometimes it needs to be extreme. When it comes to your growth, you need to do it in a way where it's healthy and it's sustainable.
That's super helpful, man.
Okay. Routine. Love routines. Love routines. And I have like it almost down to a science for me of I'll incorporate new habits in my life and I bring them into other routines that are already thriving. So I love routines because it makes habit building so easy. And so when you think about this, I just use the same example. This is just example what it looks like. You have the habit, which is read 10 pages. When you think about routine, you're thinking about the frequency, how many times are you going to do it, where you're going to do it, and when you're going to do it. So that is the routine. The frequency, the where, and the when. So when you start off with like reading 10 pages and you're putting it into a routine, a lot of people struggle with something like a habit because they just randomly put it in their day. They randomly put it in their day and there's no time frame when they're really going to do it. I'm just going to do this. And the next day is different. And the next day is different. How long do you think it's going to stay that way? Because life happens, because you already have other things you're doing, it's going to be very easy for this to be gone. So a routine helps you sustain the habit in your life because you're tying it to something that already exists. So when you don't have anything existing with it, you can still do it. It's just so hard. Yeah. But when you tie it to something that already exists, it makes it so much easier to do. So when it comes to reading 10 pages, you see how, let's say one of the things you do every night, you eat a snack at your kitchen table. Great. If that's something you always do, then why don't you just tie in after, at my kitchen table, that's where I'm going to do it, after I eat a snack, before I brush my teeth. So you see the picture? It's like, I already brushed my teeth, I already eat a snack, why don't I just sandwich in reading 10 pages so there's already a flow? So I'm at my kitchen table, I have my book laying there. After I finish that, I read 10 pages, close the book, keep it there so I can utilize it tomorrow, and then I brush my teeth and I finish my routine. Just like that, you have something that you can sustain long term and you start reading more books. Yeah, is it still going to be a little bit challenging to add that in? Yes, but it's going to be way easier if it was just left standalone in your day. Now you have a place that it fits. And after about a month or two, this feels like normal. And it's a part of your natural rhythm of things.
So much more effective than reading Atomic Habits. Hearing this, like that's like, and it's so funny. So first off, this is the first time I'm realizing that I could eat and read at the same time. Sorry about all the parallel processing, right? But it's like seeing this too, and it just makes perfect sense, man. And just this whole construct too of like, I think certain habits feel like they belong in certain routines or certain parts of the day. I think taking the liberty to actually question that a little bit, and we talked a little bit about reading in the morning, right? Like that's weird, right? Like to think about a professional CEO like reading before they start their workday. It's abnormal. It is, right? Do you know a lot of people that do that?
Not
People that
necessarily.
have hacked the system. You know a couple of them, right? I'm sure they're pretty successful people. But it's interesting, right? Like I think again, everyone always assumes like my day is over or I'm on a beach and I'll read a book. Like you don't think that you could actually do it at that certain point in time, right? Never mind while you're eating a snack before you brush your teeth. Like the thought process is like after I brush my teeth, before I get to have the best relaxing part of my day, I'm gonna read.
Mm-hmm.
What about right before you brush your teeth and then get in bed and go to sleep? I don't know. Obviously, just different ways of thinking. They're really helpful, man.
You know, this goes back to, and I'll remind you of this often, like we think about who you are, who you're becoming, and who you want to be. The who you're becoming are your goals, your challenges, your habits, your routines, your priorities. So when I think about those things, they're very, very serious to me. When I'm building a routine, those routines are helping me become more of who I am and more of who I want to be. So of course, I'm not just throwing random stuff, and I think that needs to shift in a lot of people's mindsets when it comes to habit building. You're just building random habits. Why? This person's doing it. When I'm thinking about my habit building now, I'm thinking about, does this help me become more of who I am? Does this help me become more of who I want to be? Heck yeah, let's build this. And so there's some intention and focus towards it. So it's not random. So there's real intention to why I'm doing it. And I think people struggle with knowing why they're even building the habits they're building. When you get the clarity behind it, it just changes everything.
And it's really special just thinking about like, and I did the exact same motion. I said, this one's just on the list, right? But ferociously present. Like, I never think about my habit I'm trying to build of meditation in the confines of that principle.
Mm.
I think about it as Jay Shetty meditates, Ed Ed meditates. I gotta meditate. Like I'm not even thinking about it in the so what of why I should be doing it.
Man, I've had clients who I would like kind of preach this to them in a way and just say, this is why this is so valuable to them. And I'll even bring up, this is who you want to be. Oh my God, of course you need to incorporate this. Like I get them excited and then they're like, yeah, I'm not sure. And then they hear someone who's like uber successful, like, well, they're doing it, so I guess I'm going to try it now. And I'm like, whatever it takes. But that honestly is kind of the world we live in. It's like you see someone who is uber successful, and that's usually what gets people to try things. And I'm just like, I wish people would just see like, this is for you, like you have something so unique and special in you. That's why I want you to do this. Not because of whoever else is doing it. Who cares? You. That's what's so exciting. The uniqueness in you is why you need to be doing this.
Ike said it's okay to buy a jet like Greg Cardone.
Oh man, I feel like I need to keep growing and learning how to articulate this because it's such it's such a challenge, I think, as I talk to more people because we have so much noise hitting us. And the voices all around us are louder than the voices that's within.
And it's interesting too, because I still feel like people believe there's like a boilerplate of good habits that the best of the best have. And that's the rightful sigh,
Yeah.
It's really fascinating. And I think too, it's funny how easy it is to visualize and accept from a working out perspective, but how difficult it might be to visualize and accept from a meditation perspective or a journaling perspective. And some of these other, like, quite frankly, like very critical helpful habits if they're on your path. But it's easy, like working out, right? We look at that and it's like very visible, real, not very visible, but there's an incremental progression that you can track, monitor versus a feeling, right? Or, a level of acceptance, whatever that might be. It's just a lot harder on that side of the fence. Feels a lot harder on that side of the fence.
You're right. And the biggest thing is, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. This is hard. Like when you talk about goals, I get really excited, but also in my gut, I know it's hard. Because once you get to the practicality, that's why I love habits routines. I know every goal that you say you want to do is going to break down into challenges, habits, routines, and priorities. And that's just going to load up. So my mind goes to, where are you going to fit this? Because it's a lot.
Yeah.
And so if you actually want to accomplish it, and I want you to move past the just the excitement of getting a goal, because it is exciting. If you set a goal, it's really, really exciting. I want you to not just be excited about the goal. I want you to be like, whew, man, how am I going to fit this in my day? Is this realistic now? Should I be doing this? That mentality is healthy. And that's where I want you to get to. So the more we talk about it, I'm not trying to scare you away from goals. I want you to be excited about the goals you set. I just want you to be able to look at it in such a way where you start to bring it into your day-to-day. Because when it gets in your day-to-day, that's when it becomes real. And we love setting goals where it's just like a theory, like, oh, this is going to be so awesome to do, but we don't think practically, how is this going to actually happen in my life over this period of time? Like if I'm saying I am going to swim a mile in the pool at the end of the year, how am I going to do it? Yes, it includes swimming lessons. Yes, it includes me practicing. Yes, it includes me watching YouTube videos. All those things are happening in my day to day. They're not just like, oh, these are things I want to do. These are things that I'm doing. And knowing that I can be doing those things and still be off the mark and have to figure out new things in order to incorporate to still hit my goal. So it's not just like you set it and you're done. You're constantly tweaking. Think about doing that with 4 things. It's crazy. On top of your regular day-to-day schedule. That's why I want you to feel the weight of it of let's be real careful about the things that we're adding, because this is going to disrupt our life in the best way possible.
It's really fascinating, man. Scary. Is that okay?
Yeah, it should feel a little heavy, right?
Yeah. And I don't get and honestly, like my brain too is like thinking about a goal and how much uncertainty there is within a goal and just getting back to focusing on what's controllable, regardless of like that 168 hours. Like it just never feels like enough time, but I think it's just making sure that I have a subset, right, of the right things that I'm really heavily focused on. And I think it kind of reminds me of like when you're choosing like the best 3 out of 10. It's really difficult to choose 3. Like the other 7 aren't not important. So I'm not necessarily looking forward to that process, but I think it's going to be worthwhile.
And I love how you said feels like 168 hours is enough time, and you're right. But is 1,000 hours enough? If 5,000 hours enough? So I want you to keep expanding it. Like this is not just my day. I got to think in months. I got to think in years.
I wonder who the person was that polluted us all to think that we have any control over time. Isn't that fascinating, man? Like you're so right about that. That's probably the most enlightening thing that you've said, which is saying a lot. But that's just 1 week.
Yeah.
Like that's wild, man.
Okay, we are going to land this plane. I do want you to practice. So I do have this here for you to just kind of play around with it a little bit. Obviously, your morning routine is a lot bigger, but I just want you to kind of like play around with what are the 3 to 4 things that I'm doing. And I love thinking about, James Clear talks about this, keystone habits. What is a habit you're like, I always do this? Because you can anchor other things around that. And so utilize that. And so for me, I had to split up my morning routine into early morning and a morning routine, because I had 2 different points of where I'm doing it. One was at the gym and the other's in my office.
I like that because I think you see in my schedule too, like in my morning routine is 4 hours. Like there's a lot of stuff that's happening in there. And I think even just like thinking about the buffer space after that, really between like 8 and 10, And there is something special to be said about the location.
Yep.
Okay, I'm gonna think about that too, man.
So that's a practice. Here is another sheet. I want you just to run through this and read it really quick just to give some context, but of just
Top to bottom or right to left to right?
left to right.
Okay. Read. So habits. Read for 15 minutes every night in bedroom chair before bed. Write down 5 things you're grateful for in a journal every morning at the kitchen table while you're drinking your morning coffee. Prioritize your day every morning at kitchen table after you write your gratitude list. Go on a walk with family Monday through Friday in the evenings around the block after you get off work. Work out for 30 minutes Monday through Friday in the mornings at LA Fitness before work. Floss for 2 minutes every morning in the bathroom after you brush your teeth.
Now, do you see how specific it is?
Yeah.
I want you, when you think about that for yourself as you kind of play around with this, I want you to get as specific as possible. Because I want you to really know when you're going to do it. And it not just tied to a time, it tied to something that you're already actually doing. Because sometimes if you do like at 10 o'clock, that doesn't mean much because your 10 o'clock can look different every day. Right. I want it to be tied to something that you are doing before, after, or during.
Got it, man.
And here's kind of another sheet to practice on. Okay?
Perfect.